Thanks, Frodem. Appreciate it as always. I am Raven, and joining me for yet another game as we cast earlier on today is Sol. You appreciate that one, didn't you?
I do. I feel like I'm directly responsible for this meme on Raven culture that has developed at HCT. I think I've just infected everyone. So
yeah. I owe you for that one, definitely. But we do have a great game coming up as the last match of the day, actually.
Yep.
It is going to be Casie versus Pavel. So, we've sort of seen Casie come up in the past few months in terms of the tournament performance.
Right.
In prelims, he's been to a couple of the LAN events as well. So he's been really starting to just make a name for himself, across, like, more broadly than being one of those players where, the pro scene knows who he is, but no one else does. So he's doing really well so far. And Pavel as well, we've discussed at length, another really strong player. And bringing quite a cool lineup in the form of the Anything Paladin, the Cthulhu Warrior, the Reno Luck, and the mid-range Shaman.
Yeah, the strategies between these two players are kind of interesting. As you see, both Warlocks have been banned, so the Reno Lock's banned from both sides. But the overall strategy, Casey's kind of tried to next level this, which is bring the decks that beat the control decks that people are going to bring to beat the big Fab 4 decks, right? Yeah. Whereas Pavel's just like, I'm going to bring my decks that I like to play. He's kind of notorious for Anything Paladin and all that kind of stuff, so he's just brought a lineup of decks that he feels strong with and that he feels he can play to maximum efficiency and get himself through, whereas Casie has this kind of deep meta counter strategy to him, so it'll be interesting to see how the two lineups interact. Yeah,
the players are actually, one's just taking a quick minute just to get ready, just having a bit of a break before the match. Again, don't blame anyone, very important match, one they really need to win. But I was just going to ask you, and we were sort of half discussing it before we came on, like, in terms of the bans, like, are you a bit surprised that Casey's Rogue wasn't banned out? Because we were casting the game early and we saw what that deck can do to some of the more heavy control styles, which both players are pretty much bringing.
I am a little bit, yeah. Definitely the Miracle Rogue seems like it is almost a free win. Like, it's going to pick up a win at some point in this series. Also, the mid-range Shaman from Pavel's side. Mid-range Shaman is one of those decks that just almost catches control decks unawares. It's one of those decks that can just farm control by not really doing anything for large periods of time. Just totem pass. Okay, now I have a Flame Tongue and I get insane value. At some point, my Thunder Bluff goes in, and it just gets kind of crazy. So I'm a little bit surprised by the bans, but again, like Reno Lock, hand lock style decks are classically kind of the king of control. So in this very, very 8 fairly controlling decks, I can understand why you'd want to get rid of that constant card advantage engine that comes with the Reno Lock.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, as well, is like, this is Conquest, just to reiterate. So it's not like there's a chance that the Shaman can just sweep the whole lineup. And the same with the Rogue, right? You don't really have to worry about that too much. But also, what are you thinking on the Pavel's like Anything deck as well? It's really like, it's such a cool deck. I love the early iterations of it when good old Murkai was in the lists and we could play that. But in terms of now, like, it's not actually you can't really put out the crazy amounts of damage you used to be able to do.
Yes.
But, like, is it good enough? Obviously, Pavel's doing pretty well with it this tournament, but is it good enough overall to carry, like, a tournament that's as tough as this one?
So it's still a really, really strong deck against control decks in general. Asterisk except Control Warrior, where you just don't really have the damage to go through anymore, and he is going to come up against Control Warriors here, and in particular N'Zoth Warrior, but N'Zoth Warrior doesn't have that huge burst armor that Cthulhu Warrior has, for example. You're not going to get those Ancient Shield Bearers coming out. There's still the shield blocks that will get the job done to an extent. The maximum damage output of the second Anything, if you wait for full value, is 32. So at that point, if the Warriors just spiraled out of control, it can be difficult. But against decks like Reno Lock, for example, then it can definitely get the job done really well. Yeah,
it's going to be really difficult to deal with. It's the same issue of any deck with any form of combo versus Reno would struggle. But as we see, like, the Warlocks are actually banned out anyway. So nothing too much to worry about, as Pavel is still taking a minute to get ready for the game. So he's just making sure he's completely set and ready to go up against Casie. He might well have actually checked out Casey's match because it was on stream, of course.
Very true,
so that's going to be an interesting one. They obviously know all the deck lists, as we've said a few times today. Each player does know the full deck list of every player they go against anyway. But it's always interesting to actually watch a player pilot the deck because there's one half of it where I know all the cards, but then how do they play? Are they a bit more risky, a bit more like just reined in a little bit, where they play a lot more safe?
And also, naturally, there's this school of thought that says, people like to play control mirrors because a game that lasts 15 to 20 turns as opposed to a game that lasts 8 to 10 turns has, 50 to 70% more decisions in it because they last longer. The more decisions you make, the more you have a chance to impart your skill on the game and outplay your opponent. So I really personally enjoy seeing control mirrors go up against each other for that reason specifically. And you said, it's great to see someone pilot the deck, and from the other perspective, it's great to just see, people's impressions and ways of playing a deck and mastery of individual decks come out and shine, because there's a world of difference. For example, George C playing Freeze Mage, or a Laughing playing Freeze Mage, and random idiot number 723 playing Freeze Mage.
Can you not look at me when you say that, please?
Sorry. There's no one else I really want to call out. So
okay,
I'll keep staring at you directly into your beautiful eyes.
It's because of my good looks and not because that was the point you're trying to make. So that's fine. But yeah, in terms of this matchup overall, I'm kind of interested to see how fast Casie plays as well, because that's something we also commented on. Very sure of himself, but when you're playing as we said, control matchups predominantly, that you really have to think about those. The second you sort of burn a resource and not get the most value out of it, that's when you start to fall behind. But we do go into game 1 of Casie versus Pavel. It's going to be the last game on stream of the day, and it is going to be the mid-range Shaman versus the Rogue.
Is indeed. Casie, I believe, led out with the Rogue in the previous series that we cast as well.
The fastest Rogue game ever.
It was nuts.
He may as well have been playing against AI at that point. It was literally just like bang, 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 done.
And yeah, if Pavel, like you said, did have a chance to quickly scout out the previous game on stream, he may have had a read on Casie just favoring leading out Rogue. But mid-range Shaman is not the ideal matchup. But honestly, he doesn't really have an ideal matchup in his lineup to take care of the Rogue, which is why we were discussing the ban possibility early on. So it feels like this is a win that Casie is going to pick up, not necessarily in this matchup, but it feels like the Rogue winning isn't a huge impact on this series as a whole. Like, the Rogue is going to pick up a win at some point, right? It's not going to be a huge win for Casie when it happens.
Yeah, and as we said earlier, the big difference in Conquest between, say, Last Hero Standing is that, you can actually just let one deck slide. You just don't mind. Like, yeah, you can take that win, but it's the rest of your lineup you're going to have to struggle with to try and beat me. So mulligans are done, and not looking too bad for Casie either. He's got, some early minions there. Got the prep. It's going to be quite impactful. Just it's good to have hold of that. But also, the mid-range Shaman doesn't normally apply tons of pressure. They have the ability to, play the Tunnel Trug, Totem Golem, Feral Spirit, so on. So they can do like a bit of a high pressure opening, but it's not really what they need to do to win a lot of games.
Yep, Blood Mage Thanos just dropped on the board here. It can be used to answer the threat of Totem Golem with the backstab that he has and still be able to develop Farseer to maintain the tempo. So this is a really strong play. Since Shamans have started to cut Earthshock from the deck, there really just isn't a nice answer to Blood Mage Thanos in the deck. They don't do 1 damage easily. So really, really like this play, because he just essentially nets an entire Earthen Ring Farseer's worth of tempo here by developing the Blood Mage preemptively.
Yeah, exactly. And Earthen Ring actually deals with pretty much anything that's going to come out anyway, because even at worst, another Totem Golem comes out and you can just hero power trade.
Yep.
At worst. But, as we can see, there's not really too many great options. There is the coin into the Tuskar Totemic, but, again, like, at worst, the Tuskar Totemic just dies anyway.
It's interesting. So Coin Tuskar would have rounded out the curve into 4-mana Thing from Below next turn. I mean, the Totem does the same thing, so I guess the difference here is that he's trading a Rockbiter weapon for the Farseer as opposed to trading the main body of his Tuskar Totemic for the Farseer. So I guess when you put it like that, this is a pretty sensible play. And before we've even had a chance to talk about Casey's turn, the Tomb Pillager is on the board, and we're back to Pavel.
Doesn't mess about. Kate's like, you know what? I'm going to make casting really difficult by playing my turn in like 2 seconds. You have to try and keep up with it. So that's our challenge for this game.
Sure. Raw SI7 agent on the board. No combo, but no combo necessary. He did have the coins available, but with those 2 auctioneers in hand, his coin, his prep, all his cheap spells are extremely valuable. But that is a pretty juicy looking Argent Horse Rider with 2 Flame Tongues on the board.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty nutty as well, because he can, still work in the Thing from Below if he wants. If he, I imagine that's the play. He could still just press Totem, to really go for a bigger impact thing next turn or the turn after. But imagine you just want to get that 5/5 down, and this is so much damage. Those 2 Flame Tongue Totems buffing each other. Like, they shouldn't do that. They should just be 0/3s buff other things that aren't each other, because that's just ganging up on them.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's some consideration with the positioning here from Pavel, because he could just place the taunt next to one of the Flame Tongues, so that the 2 Flame Tongues are still able to both attack individually. But he's thinking about, say, for example, a comboed Eviscerate plus the dagger hit here as one of the most likely ways to kill the Thing from Below. So in that case, you kind of want your opponent to be taking 9 when they swing in at that point.
take that 9 to the face, but do you see Casie with the Gadget Zen, and even a really quick Gadget Zen turn. It's like, Casie plays this deck like he's played like a bajillion games of Rogue. Like, the second he sees a card drawn...
sorry, how many?
An exact bajillion games.
Is that more or less than 162?
It's definitely more.
Okay, good.
Yeah. But it's like every single card he just saw off Gadget Zen, as soon as it appeared, he just knew exactly what the follow-up is, whether he wants to play it or not, straight away. And there's not even like, there is consideration, but it's just almost autopilot. Hey.
Yeah, Hammer of Twilight. It's such an interesting card. I mean, I've looked at it, and it's kind of a counter that you can consider in like a Harrison Jones infested meta, where you're not all in on Doomhammer like the aggro shaman is, so you don't necessarily have to play it, and therefore you just play a weapon that's kind of resistant to Harrison in a way, because
it beats Harrison.
Right,
to a
when
large
it
extent.
gets Harrisoned, you just 4-2 back into the Harrison, and you're like, well, good job, buddy, you drew some cards.
And you've more than likely attacked with it at least once, right? You're
exactly.
just more than likely going to hit when you equip it as well. So really good. It's going to get some work done. As we've mentioned earlier about the old Stormcrack, like 4 damage seems to be a really good number against a lot of minions in this game at the moment. And Casie is actually under a lot of pressure. 9 health. It's still the weapon. It's not quite Doomhammer, but chuck a Rock Biter on it, and it's still going to get the job done.
Yeah, Alec here in hand as well with that Flame Tongue consolidated. Even if the Flame Tongue was to go bye-bye in another turn, he'd have Alec here Rock Biter. But all of that is irrelevant because Casie concedes as quickly as he plays the game.
Yeah, and I love right at the end there. Pavel needs to be an honorary British guy because he just pulled out a little cup of tea or something and just swigged from it. Yeah, so I was like, okay, that's a good victory thing. Keep that one going, Pavel. But yeah, pretty straightforward game. That one, like, nothing too crazy happened. Pavel just got the board early. Those double Flame Tongue straight into the Argent Horse Rider was just like, okay, what can you even do?
Yeah, I mean, when one Flame Tongue hits the board and you don't have an answer to it, that feels pretty terrible. When there's 2 of them just rocking away and then the follow-up is Argent Horse Rider, then that's probably not a situation you're ever going to recover from.
I told you, when the Flame Tongues themselves get to attack, that's when you know you're in a bad spot.
Yep.
Shouldn't be allowed. But,
ban it!
Oh yeah, it's not good enough. That's definitely should be high on the priority of cards to look at, surely. Okay. There's definitely nothing else. But yeah, it's going to be Pavel 1-0 up with the Shaman there, so that's going to be off the table for him. And Casey's still actually got his whole lineup, but as we said, he's probably going to gain a win with that Rogue at some point anyway. Yep. I would not be surprised if he just requeues it.
Yeah, I made the point that the Rogue winning isn't going to be an important win for Casie. Similarly, I don't think that mid-range Shaman winning is a big win for Pavel because it was always going to pick up a win against one of these control decks just because of that greedy, kind of grindy style that mid-range Shaman can play in that really punishes control decks pretty hard.
Yeah, such a weird deck when all you do is hero power and that's actually enough to win the game.
Yeah, like against Control Warrior, like it's just a threat. Like, Totem Pass is just the biggest turn in the game. Like, eventually they just have to brawl your totems. It's so sad for the Control Warrior.
Kind of ridiculous overall, but we are into the next game. And Pavel versus Casie, 1-0 to Pavel, and he is going to go with his Cthulhu Warrior versus Casey's Rogue. As we said, no surprise, Casie locking in the Rogue again. But also, something that's pretty rough to deal with this Cthulhu Warrior. I think Pavel's got, again, probably the best pick he could get, where, you can actually just, if you can control the Rogue enough early on, you can actually just, go out of range of the Rogue a lot of the time.
For sure. You can stack up a lot of armor, but Casey's list is the double Conceal build with double Cold Blood, Leroy, Edwin Van Cleef.
If there's a list that's going to do it, it's that one.
Right, exactly. You have the potential to just jam through so much damage. One Conceal to just draw your deck with Auctioneer, and then a second Conceal to just try and get a huge Edwin concealed and jam some Cold Bloods on it. That's generally the strategy. Cards, specifically Brawl, kind of have something to say about that a lot of the time, but your idea is that you're tempoing out a lot of the time to try and bait the Brawls before that can happen. Yeah. So it's definitely a deck that can make things happen, but yeah, Ancient Shield Bearer is a hell of a card.
Yeah. Put it with its best friend Bran. It's going to be pretty good overall, but pretty weird opening hand actually from Casey. He's got double Deadly Poison, the prep, the backstab, and the sap. Would be great if we were looking at an aggro matchup here. He's got a lot of options to be able to deal with early minions, and still going to get some work done versus the 2-3 from Pavel here. But still, nothing too great early on. He really wants to see a Tomb Pillager next turn. Would be the perfect draw off the top.
Yeah, for sure. He can deal with this River Croc no problem. eliminate it from the board, but it's already starting to do its work in terms of buffing Cthulhu, and with the Cthulhu's Chosen coming down, there we go. Job done, magic number achieved, 10-10. The deck is already tied together nicely. When you get this kind of draw with a Cthulhu deck where you just immediately hit 10, you think, okay, that's my major concern over with this game. Now I can just focus on controlling the board, developing threats, whatever I need to do. I don't have to really consider Cthulhu's size for a while now this game.
Yeah, because now you know that all the cards that have like variable effects are now just at all powerful ranges, right? You don't even have to worry about it. So your cards that are quite weak normally actually just end up super powered. So there's the two. I've done this a few times today.
Yeah.
I should commentate my own games when I play on ladder and hope it works well enough.
Isn't that just called streaming, and don't you do that?
Oh, I don't talk about gameplay. I just talk about music on my stream.
Okay. Maybe that's where you're going wrong.
That's why I lose a lot.
Yeah, makes sense.
The game's just something for people to just look at while they listen to me, right?
Sure. Aren't you the thing to look at? Isn't that the main attraction of your stream?
Shall I go just like full camera? But anyway, we are going to see the ghoul come down now. It is going to pretty much set up a trade with the Tomb Pillager.
Yeah, but unfortunately, Deadly Poison number 2 is potentially going to have something to say about that. And with not a lot else going on in the hand, although the Violet Teacher being picked up is a pretty big deal, he's actually going to use the Deadly Poison with the prep. Wait, what? Is he just deliberately playing around Brawl here by not putting 1/1s on his board?
Yeah.
He has to be, right?
I mean, yeah, that is just not something you would
he did it
right?
quickly.
Like,
he doesn't look sad about it, and he's a very good rogue player.
He didn't emote saying oops.
Right. I mean, and it's justifiable, right? It's not like something you look at like that's just obviously wrong. But yeah, he just doesn't want too many 1/1s on the board. But it seems strange because when you have a Violet Teacher on the board that you're hoping to stick, and your hand is entirely spells, those 1/1s are going to appear eventually, right? So it's not like you can play around Brawl forever.
Yeah, really interesting. But what this sap does, or the double sap as well in hand, is allow him to just throw back the Sylvanas as we saw and start to build the board up enough to pressure damage. And this is still even not a great Brawl, right? You know, there needs to be Brawl plus like Execute or Weapon to really have a chance of clearing the board. So looking pretty good. Does get the Shield Slam and the Execute off, so really does clear up as much as possible. Second Tomb Pillager in Casey's hand, but with that coin, you know, and the prep, he's really looking for a gadget pretty soon. Look at the speed. I didn't even see what card he drew.
It's nuts. It's actually nuts. There's the Edwin, so he's going to be considering his options here. But the Warrior has pretty much reached, you know, stabilization stations here, so something special is going to have to happen for Casey. I'm not sure if the 6/6 Van Cleef is going to be special enough, especially with that second Shield Slam sat chilling already. But Pavel is just going to play the Brawl here and go ahead and sweep this board out. He has the potential to armor up Shield Slam, whatever survives if it's a big threat. And it is not a big threat. It is, in fact, a 1/1, which Casey so meticulously tried not to have on the board.
Anything but 1/1s. He does draw into Leroy, though, and again, just the sheer speed of this play is actually just mind-boggling to me. He does have the Leroy, but I just think for this game to have any chance, especially with the Shield Bearer there, it's just going to have to be a gadget and into something, into a miracle, let's be honest. Let's use the name of the deck.
Got him! So the armor comes down. We are back above starting health up at 31. And yeah, Casey, like I said, I mean, this is a man after my own heart. I mean, I'm a fairly slow player, but I've faced some criticism in tournaments before for just like conceding games where there wasn't lethal on board. Like people are saying, oh, come on, this is like a serious tournament. Why are you conceding? Like, I've played enough Hearthstone to know when I've lost, and I don't feel the need to mentally damage myself by continuing to play this game that I can't win for 5 more turns. Like, why should I bother? So Casey seems to be of that philosophy as well.
Yeah, and I think if, like, again, you know, a lot of people could be like, oh, you shouldn't have conceded. If you actually take in all the variables of what cards he had in hand, he pretty much needed gadgets and into Astute, you know, into Double Cold Blood, into Conceal, whatever. And then on top of that, he needed Pavel to have nothing in hand when he actually had about 5 or 6 cards. Yeah. So, you know, you add all those up and you're like, game's over, you know, with that much health. So I completely understand it. I completely agree when that's the situation you're in, where you sort of do the maths and like, this is very, 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 very unlikely unless Pavel actually just quits. Just done with the game and walks off.
Yeah,
so.
At that point it feels like you are just like waiting for a DC, right?
Yeah,
like
just waiting for something to go terribly, terribly wrong. But Pavel taking a very quick 2-0 lead in this matchup, and I feel that's a lot down to just Casey's speed of play is mainly the style of the games here, and at last we're going to see the deck I'm really enjoying.
How badly have I cursed Casie is the question, though, because I said this Rogue getting a win was not going to be a big deal. Is he about to go 0-3 with Rogue?
Potentially, although again, this is the style of deck that I feel like with what lineup that Pavel has, that Casey's got the best chance of with the Rogue. Like Paladin doesn't, or at least this variant of Paladin, the Murloc one, doesn't really put too much pressure on in almost all circumstances, unless you get a really aggressive draw with the Murlocs, and your opponent can't really deal with them. So Casey's gonna have enough time to actually just prepare his hand and then burst him down, because again, the heals not so great for the Paladin. The difference between that and the Warrior is that the Warrior can actually just go past 30 health, whereas Paladin's always stuck at max.
Right, and just in case you were thinking Pavel wasn't targeting control enough just by bringing anything Paladin, he's got an Elise in there as well, because why not?
Yeah, definitely sort of a flare pick in this deck, but when you think about it, when you get to the, as you said, in the control matchups in the super late game, like a Humility might just not do it, do you know what I mean? And you turn that into a legendary, very similar to Warrior. Warrior has a lot of like potentially dead cards in the heavy control mirrors.
Sure.
So I kind of like the choice, and also it's actually a threat in itself to a certain extent, because it's a 3-5 that Casey's actually just got to deal with. He can't just let it repeatedly hit him.
All right, so Drake comes down to contest the Elise. No True Silver for Pavel, which would be the dream card to have right now to start sniping this away. So I think we're going to see a Doomsayer developed here. Yes, we are. And I kind of like this because it's the situation where, like, sure, my Doomsayer probably dies, but then I get to keep my Elise. And if my Doomsayer does by some miracle go off, then I have Solemn Vigil in hand, which is just the absolute dream in terms of cheap card draw. So.
Yeah, I really like this style of Doomsayer play. Give your opponent like 2 mediocre to bad options as opposed to a great way to clear, unless they do have something pretty special, which definitely is a thing. And now we see Gadgetzan being drawn with 2 conceals in hand, in fact, as well. So Casey's going to get some work done, and that is a lot of face damage.
He has to use, I mean, I was going to say, the problem with this is that he has to use the Eviscerate to take care of the Doomsayer, and I totally respect this play, because you are asking your opponent to have drawn an Equality and an Activator right at the top of their deck, pretty much. But at this point, with the Pyro Equality there to take care of this, that can be followed up by a Solemn Vigil for 2 mana, and the Forbidden Healing that can now stabilize against Casey's hand, which is more or less just damage right now, although he does have Auctioneer Conceal number 2. This is a thing that can potentially just remove a lot of the damage potential from the deck after both of those Cold Bloods have already been used.
And if you just draw Prep, I was just going to say, like, Casey's probably helped with the decision there because he had Auctioneer Conceal, not for next turn, but potentially the turn after.
Right.
You're not really going to die instantly versus this deck this early in the game.
Sure. But
the Prep was just perfect. Get the Auctioneer down early. We are going to see the second Doomsayer and say, well, you've got to answer this now, or the Auctioneer does go bye-bye. But give Casey a really good chance to, refill his hand.
So fast! I'm sorry, I just cannot get over how quick he plays this game.
Oh, he got the backstab in the wrong order. It's kind of unfortunate, but he can clear up the Doomsayer, which is going to be pretty huge.
He is going to choose to cycle it on his own Auctioneer here as well, which means he's opened up to the Consecration that's in Pavel's hand. Otherwise, sorry, backstab on the 3-1. Yeah, I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot. Ignore me. Yeah, all right, buddy.
Take it where I can get it.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, this does avoid the Consecrate and the Gadgets, and you want to make that creature as difficult as possible to kill. But Lay on Hand's going to come down, just help refill Pavel's hand as well, as he kind of needs sort of fire to fight fire here. He knows Casey's probably going to fill up his hand pretty quick the following turn, purely because there's no way to deal with this Auctioneer.
And honestly, I mean, it's really hard to do against Rogue, but Pavel does have a fringe possibility of just attrition as an out here, because both of those Cold Bloods and an Eviscerate have already been used. The total damage output, if he can get a handle on the board, is actually fairly low. So True Silver here to finally take care of that Auctioneer problem, and the Bluegill Warrior to take care of the 3-1, followed by the Aldor to neutralize the 5-4, means that Casey is still a long way away in terms of damage, and that's 1 War Leader and 1 Bluegill already in the bank for the anything can happen.
Glad you're doing the maths on that. So.
Yeah, it's fine.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a way you can keep hold of it, especially with the Lay on Hands. Double Lay on Hands in the deck, as well as the Forbidden Healings as well. There's so much healing. Ragnaros Light Lord as well. Yeah, and Happy Rag, of course. There's Forbidden Healing as well. So yeah, as long as Pavel can deal with this, and he has the weapon to clear off the 3/3 if he wants, and just leave the Tomb Pillager up. There's just he can really just stabilize quite easily here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are officially on the attrition plan here. And I actually don't mind trading 3/3 for 3/3 here, because, again, this increases your attrition out, just get the way out of damage, and also your opponent does not have the option to bump the 1/4 into your 3/3 and then reduce your Ragnaros' effectiveness. So this is actually a pretty effective play.
Yeah, and there were just higher value cards for the True Silver as well. There were just better cards that you want to kill, you know, a couple of which we can already see in hand, the second Gadget Zen and the second Tomb Pillager. So going to get some value from that, as Casie doesn't really have a great way to deal with this. It's going to sap Rag. Just to go back in hand means it will need a replay if he wants to have that continued healing, and also removes the threat of damage, because Happy Rag does like to attack face sometimes.
He does, yeah. Despite being a happy guy, he can get business done every now and again if he needs to. But yeah, like you said, more important targets for True Silver. Azure Drake is exactly one of those. And well, I mean, 7 damage done to the hero here. Seems like a good position to just play a Ragnaros and heal yourself back up to full. And again, the attrition plan just seems to be working out here for Pavel. He's just going to outlast the damage in the deck.
Yeah, and also with, as you said earlier, both Cold Blood's gone. Right. You know exactly what health you need to be at every turn.
Yep.
Right? You just know. You know what's left in the deck. You know what health you need to be at, and you don't have to worry about crazy burst, which is the the way Paladin loses a lot in this matchup, or any sort of combo variant of deck.
It's just, this is it. This is damage in hand right now, like Eviscerate Leroy, and the Eviscerate is being used to cycle and try and clear up the Rag, and this is just a miserable time for Casie. He attacks in with the Deadly Poison Charge, takes 8 to face. He is not having a good time right now.
Not at all. There is the anything, or the first anything in hand. What are we on to? Like, what is that going to perform? We've not seen any of the charge. No,
it's in 1 blue girl, 1 more leader.
Ah, we're 1-on-1. Okay.
Yeah,
so
it is a 4 damage anything can happen.
Hey, that could end the game. At this point, that could really end the game. The Oo's going to come down, clear off the buffed weapon as well. So. And at this point, Pavel's not even bothered about even thinking about the Gadget Zen. And there's just the concede, as Casey's just like, yeah, game's done. There's not much he can do. And as you were quite rightly said, the attrition game was on pretty quick once like 2 saps and the double Cold Blood was dealt with the equality, as Casie decided to go all in on the Azure Drake with the conceal there. So really crazy set and pretty quick one.
Yeah, I think Casey's actually just now my favorite Hearthstone player. Like, the speed that he plays the game at is insane. He reminds me a lot of like old school Blackout. Remember when Blackout used to play the game incredibly quickly, but I think he realized that it was kind of punishing him a little bit and slowed down. But Casie honestly just seems to play pretty much perfectly at that speed, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Yeah,
really solid plays across the board, but Pavel is going to take the win 3-0, so super strong performance, and he's got to be feeling very, very good about his chances now.
Certainly it does, yeah. He's putting himself in a very, very strong position going into day 2, and with a lineup, like I said, of just slightly off the wall decks, and I think decks that he's just brought because they're the decks that he plays the best, they're the decks that he identifies with, the ones that he likes. I think he's well known for bringing anything Paladin at this point, and paid out pretty well for him there in the end. But it's yet again another story of just Rogue falling flat on its face, which I'm sure some people with Excel spreadsheets on Twitter might have something to say about. But there you go.
Do you think, like, in all seriousness, like, and I know this has been discussed a lot, do you think like sticking to Rogue was a mistake? Do you think at that point of, say, losing 2, you need to change it up?
I think, like, based on, like,
I know you need to win with it, of course.
Right, yeah. I know, like, obviously there's no strategic impact, but like just watching Casie play, I think that's just the natural mentality, right? It's just like, no, look, I'm playing Rogue. I'm going to win with this Rogue. I like Rogue. I'm going to get the job done. I think, like, if he was to switch away, it would almost show, like, a lack of confidence that kind of breaks the confident demeanor that he gives off by the speed that he plays. So I think it's perfectly understandable that he stuck with it. For the whole series, said that I expected Rogue to pick up a win in that series, so I definitely don't blame him for sticking to his guns.
That's fair enough. So yeah, that is going to be the last game of the day. So it's been pretty awesome. We've narrowed the players down to only a few to carry on to tomorrow, but with a roundup of the day overall, we have the rest of the guys at the blackboard.
Thanks very much, guys. It's been a fun day overall. I'm joined here at the blackboard by Frodan, Kibler, and Neil. It's the end of day number 1, and many salty, sulky figures of players who lost on day number 1 will weigh heavy on our shoulders as we head into day number 2. But you can tell that our bracket here is not very big anymore, and we have the eliminated players here. We started off with 163, and now we are down to very little players. Tomorrow we will have all the decider matches, and you can see on your screen there's not many players remaining that you might have heard of. George C there, but overall, it's been a bloody day, Dan.
Oh, bloody day for casters like you and Kibler. I think when you justify with the European as well as the Frodans casters, we're half right. We got our men on the board, so not all of us are salty. Some of us are pretty happy as well. Some of these guys are still in.
You got Mandolf still in it too.
Mandolf, my man. I have 2 of my horses in the race.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm switching my prediction. I'm sorry, buddy.
If I knew there was going to be Mandolf, I would have to pick him. It's such a great name.
How can you claim Mandolf?
He is Frodan.
It is by right. I am Frodan.
Yeah. And you can tell there, like a boss, still in it. He beat a lot of prominent names today, as well as Shane Udachi, Nick Chipper, Silvername, Dr. Hippie, as well, Nyria. Still some big names left in there. And the scariest list of them all, the Tavern Heroes, which is coming up next. And actually, there's some left remaining. Who's going to be the next Snail? Neil? Any of these players?
I wouldn't like to call it at this point, but the player who is on there that you haven't noticed is Diz Demon. Now, he's played both previous preliminaries, and he's a name that most people won't have heard of. But he's won 8 of his 12 matches previously, and he's snuck through again today. So he's quietly just putting himself in contention every single time. And I think he's one to look out for tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right. So the way tomorrow's going to work is we're going to play 4 matches up in the winners portion, and then the people who lose that will play in the 4 lower matches as well. So some people who are in the winners side of the bracket today, such as George C. and a few of our other players, they'll get 2 chances tomorrow once again, which is really cool. We haven't had too many people have repeat performances. I believe Handsome Guy was one of them over in the Asia Pacific. But to see another person back-to-back seasons be able to come, that's going to be really impressive, especially for such a young kid like George C.
Yeah, so every match tomorrow will be a decider match. So whoever wins each of the 8 matches broadcast tomorrow will be going to the championship. But before we end the day, we do have one last player that did fall. So Neil, if you could do the honors. Evangelion did lose his match.
Ooh.
So he will fall, and Raven will be eliminated from the prediction contest. And we're just going to go ahead and cross out his name, too.
Someone's got to tell him he can't show up
He's
tomorrow.
just going to go home now.
Yeah.
It's pretty far to home for Raven, too.
Have it tomorrow, right? I think we can hold it down for those 8 matches.
Yeah. But it's looking very similar to what we saw last preliminary, where at the end of day 1, we only had very few names left on the board.
I mean, it is a really rough tournament for all these players. We were saying 163 players, and I believe you said maybe 30 left at this point?
Something like that, maybe even less.
No matter who we pick up here, it's not terribly likely to make it through.
Yeah.
So, but great to see some well-known players and, like you said, repeat players like George C. Making it through in the upper bracket so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, let us know how your guys' predictions did as well. You can tweet at HCT. Make sure you tweet at Play Hearthstone with the hashtag HCT. Let us know what you're looking forward to tomorrow. If there was any decks that performed up to your expectations, or any decks that you're tired of and don't want to see tomorrow, let us know. And
or any casters.
Yeah. Or any casters. Yeah, yeah. None of those would be up here though, Dan. That's how they pick the end of the show.
The only ones are crossed off, anyways.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We really like Raven, guys. We promise.
Yeah. But thanks to all you guys for providing your analysis today and your casting. Thanks to everybody for tuning in on day number 1. Of course, we will be back for day number 2 tomorrow. Same time, same place. So from myself, from all the casters, and everybody here, the entire production crew, we thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.